Gauntlet of Death.
All right, folks, welcome to another Gauntlet of Death. John tonight is my victim, and we're going to run him through map 9. Now, John says that he has played this game several times and has never survived. So he's counting on you, folks. He's counting on you. So hopefully you've been paying attention, because
they just like to kill me.
Here we are on map 9. Now, most of you know the drill, but just in case you don't, we're going to have John begin here in the first chamber of the Gauntlet of Death. You are going to make most of the decisions. John's going to decide if your votes end up in a tie. So, first of all, John, you glance down and see the items you're going to have to help carry you through this Gauntlet of Death. But what is John carrying, folks? So, we're going to need 3 numbers from you. 3 numbers, 1 through 10, and choose A or B. So, 3 numbers, 1 through 10, and A or B.
They just want me to die.
Perhaps they're checking their notes. 543B. All right. 5 in reverse. Oh, 256B. Okay, so two picks for B, and multiple picks for 5 and 6. John, you gotta help me here. Oh, and 4. So 4, 5, and 6?
B.
He's gonna carry that weight a long time. I think it's 4, 5, 6, B. Are those the most popular choices? Okay. All right. John, you glance down. Besides your 1 lucky break, you are carrying a slice of bread, a jar of grease, and an empty sack. That is all, besides his lucky break, John will have to carry him through this run through the Gauntlet of Death.
Can't even give me a sword or anything. You give me bread. You got me bread and grease and a bag.
You glance around. This chamber you started in is full of puddles and pools. Dripping sounds emanate from the walls, and there's moss growing thickly from between the stones. Drip, drip. But wait a minute. There's another dripping sound. Growing louder. It's coming from down further behind you. An ominous sort of wet slapping noise and dripping, as if some horrible creature that was soaking wet and dripping were coming this way. These wet footprints coming ominously closer and closer. From this first chamber, carrying your lucky break, your slice of bread, your jar of grease, and your empty sack, you can only run west.
Okay.
You run to the west, pounding down the tunnel, your breath starting to catch in your mouth, and burst into the next room. In this room, it's basically empty. There's nothing opposing, there's nothing blocking you from the doorway over to the southern end of the room.
It's a trap.
There's just a big stone face on the wall with a hole in its mouth.
Are you guys looking for for stuff from last year?
Yeah.
There's some over here.
Okay.
Smaller posters. There's a whole box right here.
And then there's the door.
Got a giant stack of these.
And I have an empty sack.
Some stuff from
You have
Piece of bread.
You have a lucky break,
Let's feed it the bread.
a slice of bread, a jar of grease, and an empty sack.
Oh yeah, let's give it the bread. I'm gonna put some bread in there.
Holding up your a slice of bread, you run towards the other end of the room. However, as you run forward, a pressure plate clicks beneath your foot, and an arrow fires from the stone face, headed right at your head.
Which eye?
At his right eye. Are you still going to hold up the slice of bread for protection?
Oh, this is
From the arrow.
Are you sticking with that?
I mean, let's see. I've got grease, right?
You do,
What is the
and an empty sack, and a lucky break.
lucky break?
Although you have no time to react, you trip on the crack in the floor and fall flat on your face. The arrow passes harmlessly overhead. There's a series of clicks behind the wall. You can hear whatever mechanism it is preparing another arrow. Meanwhile, the wet footprints are slapping faster along the tunnel behind you.
Lord.
You scramble to your feet and run through the doorway before the arrow trap can reload. From here, the path splits.
That was what I was waiting for.
John still has his slice of bread, his jar of grease, and his empty sack, but he does not have a lucky break. From here, John can go southeast or southwest. Which way should he go, folks? And we're going to collect your votes now. And if there's a tie, then John picks. So, southeast or southwest, which will it be? Southeast or southwest?
Then I will see you
Southwest.
on Thursday.
We'll just run down our major talking points then, because I know Brittany's been
Southwest it is.
Southwest it is.
Yeah, there's a third southwest.
You run down the southwest tunnel, hoping to escape the creature that comes dripping and with wet footprints behind you. I love that. You burst into the next room to discover your path is blocked, this time by an enormous, angry-looking, smelly bear. An enormous brown bear, its long claws clacking on the stone, turns toward you, its eyes red. Meanwhile, the wet slapping continues to pursue you down the tunnel.
Alright, I'm gonna throw my bread at the bear and try to keep running.
You fling your bear at the your bear. You fling that would be helpful. You okay? Put bear in next.
Yeah,
to
why
that.
can't you guys give me a bear? Give me
The
bread in a bag.
why does he have to be smelly? Well, this bear is smelly. He's been in the Gauntlet of Death for a while. I mean, death.
How big is my empty sack, though? Is it big enough to go over a bear head?
It's big enough to go over your head.
Oh. Okay, the bread.
You fling the bread at the bear. It bounces off his nose as you plunge into his open jaws and are crunched for your trouble. You are extremely dead. Shall we do another run?
Extremely.
Oh, yes. The bear, eaten by a bear. Would you like to run again?
Yeah.
All right, let's do this again. So, folks.
Let's break the record for most deaths.
Once more.
I'm good at it.
Once more.
dying.
John finds himself in the first chamber of the Gauntlet of Death. Map 9. He glances down to see what he is carrying. But what is he carrying? So we're going to need 3 numbers from you. So choose 3 numbers, 1 through 10.
No puzzles.
3 numbers 1 through 10, and A or B. This is all John will have to carry him through the gauntlet, besides his lucky break. 6, 8, 9. B.
Yeah, they worked for like their first, year now.
126B. Okay, so 6 is popular.
I still haven't bought it.
159B from Brian on the YouTube chat.
What is the difference between the
Okay, so there's another
Definitely
9 and 1.
1
Those are both popular as well.
and 6.
Oh yes, 1 and 9, very popular.
Yeah, we've got 2.
Okay, looks like 169.
Sure.
Okay, 169,
B.
and it's B again. So,
Like character.
you glance down.
Was it progression?
1, 5, and 9. You are carrying, in one hand, a ball of yarn.
That saved me before.
You have, what was it, 1, 6, and 9? Yeah, 1,
Yeah,
6, and
1, 6,
9, not 1, 5, and 9. 1, 6, and 9. A ball of yarn,
Start
an empty sack,
the
and a small mongoose.
I love the mongoose.
15 minutes. For
Well, at least you have a little friend. A small pet mongoose. This is all John will have besides his lucky break. Once again, you run from the wet chamber, splashing through the puddles as wet footsteps pursue you.
It's old Greg.
These are up there.
Everybody run.
The dripping sound echoing down the tunnel relentlessly. You can only run west, and you burst into the next room. From here, you can see that the chamber is empty, but for this big stone face with a hole in its mouth, and there is a tunnel that continues on the other side of the room.
Okay. So I have my yarn, I have my sack, and then my mongoose.
Indeed, and a lucky break.
Yeah. And then I'm gonna step on that stupid trap, and it's gonna shoot me in my stupid face. I always use my lucky break the very first room I enter, every time.
That is
So-
a bad sign.
I know, but what do you guys think? Help me out. Anyone?
He's got a lucky break, a ball of yarn, what was it, 1, 6, and 9, an empty sack, and a mongoose.
Somebody save me. They don't care. They don't care about me. All right, lucky break.
All right, once again, you set off across the room, ready to duck, but the arrow, this time, fires low, aiming right at your crotch. The bolt is speeding toward you. In fear, you jump in surprise at the sight. Luckily, the arrow passes between your legs, harmlessly breaking against the opposite wall. You are able to land and run on before the trap can reload. From here, the path splits. John can go southeast or southwest. He's used his lucky break, but he still has a ball of yarn, a jar of grease, and a mongoose.
I thought I had an empty sack.
Southeast or southwest? Wait, what did I say? Not the jar of grease, the empty sack. Ball of yarn, empty sack, and a mongoose. From here, southeast or southwest?
Bear or not bear? No bear. I don't think my mongoose can take a bear. Bears don't like yarn, do they?
Not to my knowledge. But I've never met a bear in person.
Yeah,
Southeast it is. You run to the southeast, just ahead of the dripping, wet footsteps that pursue you down the tunnel. You burst into the next room, where you find the room is empty, but for the door on the opposite side, it is covered in this complex lock mechanism, interlocking gears that seem to be slightly rusted in place.
Okay.
You are carrying a ball of yarn, an empty sack, and a mongoose.
Brian wants me to grease up my sack. Thanks, Brian.
Pretty sure you didn't end up with the grease.
I didn't.
No.
No. Alright. Of course, I should have had the grease for this one, right?
Oh, I got the correct time for our panel on Saturday.
Rub the empty sack on the gears.
Morning panel is the Friday.
Yeah, I'm just gonna whip my sack out. Let's do it.
All right, you start trying to scrape the rust off with the empty sack, but it's not having much of an effect. The gears don't really turn very much before the horrible, grubby, wet frog-like monster, Froghemoth type thing.
Froghemoth.
Yeah, comes into the room, lashes out with its long tongue, and gobbles you up into its vortex-like stomach, where you will float and be digested for 100 years.
Oh. Does my mongoose
It's very unpleasant. Oh, yes.
Cool. Okay.
Everything dies. The wet creature has caught up with you.
Yeah, let me ask
All right. Well, since you've died so nice and quickly, we've got time for
Yeah,
one more
yeah,
run.
yeah.
So,
Keep killing me.
here we go.
We're going for the
John,
record
once
here.
again, you find yourself in the first chamber of the Gauntlet of Death. Map 9.
Let's do it.
You glance down. You are carrying some items. 3 items, in fact. So, we need 3 numbers, 1 through 10.
No, we won't be.
3 numbers, 1 through 10, and A or B, folks.
Okay. Right then?
Give me the grease. We need grease. And a sword or a gun, or do we have guns? No guns.
Have you ever had
Yeah,
one?
me too.
No, I always get stuck with.
We need 3 numbers.
Bread
The
and
H1 wolf,
yarn.
3 numbers. So let's see. 7 is pretty popular. 7 to 8, B.
Awesome.
Cool, we got
7 to
and 2.
4, B. Okay, 7 and 2.
Oh, that's
both quite popular. 2, 6, and 8. So 2 again, and then there's some 8.
2 8s, yeah.
So 2, 7, 8, I think it is.
Sure.
Okay.
2, 7, and 8. You glance down. You are carrying, besides your lucky break, a small hammer,
Okay.
a salt shaker full of salt, and a jar of honey.
Alright. Take me to the
Besides
bear.
your lucky break, that is all you have to survive the Gauntlet of Death. Once again, you splash through those puddles, leaving the moss behind to grow peacefully on the walls as the slapping wet footsteps pursue you down the tunnel. You can only run west from here, carrying, besides your lucky break, your hammer, your salt shaker, and your jar of honey. You burst into this next room, where nothing appears to block your path, except on the wall there's a stone face with a hole in its mouth.
And I
There's
have
an
salt,
open door across
honey.
the way.
What's the third item? Salt, honey, and what?
A hammer.
A hammer. Okay. So there's a trap on the floor. I'll do a lucky break for this one, just to get on. And then southwest.
Luckily, you run so fast that the arrow misses you completely. You feel the wind of it pass by your neck.
Yeah.
You burst into the tunnel, which splits. John is still carrying his hammer, his salt shaker, and his jar of honey. From here, he can go southeast or southwest.
Hit the trap with the hammer. Would that have worked?
You'd have to cross the floor to get to it.
Yeah, southwest.
Okay. You run to the southwest, hoping not to die. You burst into the next room, where you discover your path is blocked by a large, angry-looking brown bear with red eyes. It stares at you and bares its white fangs. Behind you, the wet footprints continue to come closer. Footsteps.
Should we hit him in the eye with the salt?
You are carrying a hammer, a salt shaker, and a jar of honey.
I don't think a hammer does much against a bear, so let's give him some honey.
Okay, you roll the jar of honey forward. The bear immediately loses interest in you and starts shoving its snout into the honey and or pulling it out with its paw. It sits peacefully in the corner, away from the door. You are able to run on. You run down and hear behind you the wet, slapping footsteps picking up their pace to pursue you. Hey, you made it a little farther. From here, you can only go southeast.
Okay.
You run down the that southeast passage and burst into the next room, just ahead of that horrible sound that is going to haunt your nightmares, surely, the wet dripping. This room contains a door across the way, locking your path forward, which has no handle and no lock. But in the very center of the door is a large nail sticking out of the door.
Hammer time.
You run up to the door and slam the hammer into the nail as hard as you can. The nail slots into the door. You hear a series of clicks and a crack as the handle of your hammer breaks, falling apart into uselessness.
Huzzah!
However, the door, after the clicks, opens up, allowing you to run onward.
Farthest I've ever made it.
Really?
Really.
That seems so unlikely.
Normally, like 2 rooms is my limit.
Well, you've made it through 3. From here, John is still carrying his
Salt?
salt shaker. From here, he can run southeast or southwest. Which way should he run, folks?
Towards the slug. The giant slug. Which is...
Southeast or southwest, folks?
Might be a. Looks like he's trying to cut it off and get some work in now. Figure out what we're gonna do. Probably.
It's up to you guys, don't kill me.
Let's see, it's 2 for southwest, 1 for southeast. It is the Gauntlet of Death. Map 9. Southeast or southwest, folks?
We need a tiebreaker. Oh, there it is. Well, it's tied again. Guys are
Well, you know, if it's tied, you get to choose.
Oh, leave my death in my own
Yeah.
hands. Oh, here we go.
Okay.
Southeast it is.
You run down the southeast passage, hoping, could this be it? You burst into the next room to find a chamber with no apparent doors besides the one you just ran in by, out of which the sound of wet feet follows you. Is there a map for this? Where? You have to make the map. In the center of the room, on a pedestal, is a toaster.
Could have used the bread. I'm going to pour my salt into the toaster.
You sadly shake the salt into the toaster, filling it up with the grains. There's a kind of a smoky smell in the air as the horrible, wet, frog-like,
Old Greg.
enormous creature, Old Greg, comes and devours you messily,
Out of a chute.
ripping you apart and throwing you into the void in its belly. You are dead. Oh, you were so close. So close. All right,
I'm
well.
still happy. I made it 3 rooms.
Nice. Well, you got to the 4th.
Oh.
Technically. You made it to the 4th. Through 3. Made it to 4. All right, well played, folks. Thank you for joining us for Gauntlet of Death. So we just let off a little steam here at the end of the workday. Please join us tomorrow. We're going to have a stream in the afternoon. Michelle is planning to stream some kind of concept art. I don't even know what yet, but I will let you know tomorrow. So, in Discord or something. So, see you later, and thanks again. And thanks for getting John further than he's ever been in one of these. Amazing.
Thanks, guys.
All right. Good night. Bye-bye.
Gauntlet of Death.